Good evening. Gaza has been bombarded with airstrikes for a second night in a row. Israel delivering on its vow that its assault on Hamas will come with a force like never before. The Palestinian militant group issued a threat of its own. It will start executing hostages if the attacks on civilians don't cease. The devastation is mounting on both sides of the border. At least 900 people have died in Israel, while more than 680 Palestinians have been killed.
Relentless strikes from the air. Gaza under siege. And tonight, speculation this is just the precursor of a full-scale ground invasion into the Palestinian enclave, as Israel retaliates for the deadliest incursion into its territory in decades. The Israeli Defence Force says it's hit more than 1,000 Hamas targets. Already, hundreds of civilians have been caught in the crossfire. And Israel's Prime Minister is vowing this assault is only the beginning.
Hamas is ISIS, and we will eliminate it in exactly the same manner.
From the Palestinian militant group, a sickening threat. It will broadcast the execution of one Israeli captive for every Israeli attack on civilians staged without warning. It's believed Hamas holds over 130 hostages, all dragged over the border, including 85-year-old grandmother Yafa Adar.
It hurts in every inch of our bodies. We're very scared for her. That's not human, whatever they've done.
2 million people live in Gaza, almost half are under 18. Israel's Defence Ministry has ordered the densely populated strip to be cut off from electricity, food, water and fuel, declaring it a complete siege. Already 300,000 reservists have been mobilised, Israel firmly on a war footing, as its forces reclaim control of communities brutalised by Hamas. Avital Al-Ajem was hiding with her neighbour when the militants arrived.
He was murdered. Yes, I was saved because he absorbed all the bullets into his body. And when I went out, I saw him dead.
In the small farming community of Beery, rescue workers recovered 100 bodies, almost 10% of its population wiped out in hours. The Hamas threat isn't limited to the east. Multiple Israeli cities have come under rocket attack, one hitting as we drove through the south.
Get your helmet.
Okay. Out the car.
The aerial bombardment blown apart by the Israeli defence system.
Well, the Iron Dome did its thing.
Yeah, it did.
Did you see that one?
Yeah.
We're on the road between Ashkelon and Gaza, and the sirens have just gone off. We've had to run from our vehicle and get low because rockets have come through. It felt like a couple of dozen were perhaps intercepted by the Iron Dome, and you can really smell in the air the explosives, and there are plumes of smoke all around us. It's very unpredictable. Earlier, the city of Ashkelon came under direct fire. Sirens forcing residents and our crew into shelter. Ooh. The scale of these attacks is unprecedented. Here in the heart of Ashkelon, not far from Gaza, this is where a rocket landed just a couple of hours ago. You can see the crater there from where it hit and what it's done to these two vehicles, completely destroying them, and how far it sprayed shrapnel. And then, just a few steps away, someone's home. But those who live here have become accustomed to danger.
We have a shelter. Everything is fine.
Odette Eldabar's car was blown apart while she took cover. Were you here when the rocket hit?
No, I was in my room, some place to hide, a lot of bombs. And when I come out from the window, I saw my car and my neighbor car. And this is the reaction.
A relatively small loss as casualties mount on both sides of the border. In Ashkelon, Israel, Edward Godfrey, 9 News.
And Nine's Euro correspondent Edward Godfrey is in Sderot, a city close to Gaza that was held by Hamas militants. Edward, residents there have certainly had a harrowing few days.
Yeah, they sure have, Pete, here in Sderot, about 3 kilometres from the Gaza border, a place that came under rocket fire as recently as just earlier this morning, local time. Behind us here, this building was actually the police station in ruins. This is where Hamas gunmen came in and took control and held control for the first 24 hours or so before Israeli forces were able to shoot and firebomb them out. So this place has been virtually under siege ever since. Residents have been staying indoors. They're only just starting to emerge. We've got police just behind this vehicle here. Well, that is a police vehicle, keeping guard, and lots of military personnel roaming the streets. And not far away, just inside Gaza, we can hear explosions going off every 30 seconds or so, every couple of minutes, just a sequence of explosions going off. In some breaking news, the Israeli Defence Forces said that they found the bodies of 1,500 Hamas militants inside Israeli territory, and that is a massive increase, Pete, in the number of people officially killed in this war so far.
All right, Edward, thank you so much. The United States has been warned not to get involved, but its military might is already on the way. Weaponry delivered to Israel as the conflict breaches borders.
The Middle East is on the brink. Protests on the streets and rockets fired into Lebanon. This is Israel taking aim at Hezbollah. Firing a written warning shot at the United States of America. Palestine is not Ukraine, Hezbollah said in a statement. If the US intervenes directly, all US positions in the region will face our attacks, and on that day, there will be no red line.
It's very, excuse me, very difficult to look at these images, Jake.
Nothing can justify these acts of terror and the killing, maiming and abduction of civilians.
As Israel fires back on Gaza, Arab anger grows. In Jordan's capital, pro-Palestinian supporters gather outside the Israeli embassy. An Israel-Jordan peace treaty is treason, they cry. The Arab League Secretary-General blaming Israeli occupation for the latest Middle Eastern conflict. And with questions about whether his government was directly involved, Iran's president celebrates the deadly attack on Israel. Calling it a sacrifice, a manifestation of jihad. Other world leaders accuse Hamas of atrocities and terrorism. Terror will not win, hatred will not win, violence will not triumph, says Germany's Chancellor. Regional tension, now global tension. On the London Underground, pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian supporters are separated by British police. At a prayer service, the UK Prime Minister receives a standing ovation as he vowed to stand with Israel.
I will stop at nothing to keep you safe.
After talks with UK and EU allies, President Biden joined them, affirming our countries will support Israel. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. Today, America's Commander-in-Chief was informed at least 11 Americans are among the hundreds of people killed. US help for Israel has already been sent. A carrier strike group. Now Congress is being told munitions and interceptors for the Iron Dome are what Israel want. Tonight, the White House has been turned blue as the US president makes his support for Israel visible. He's told Benjamin Netanyahu he will make sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself and its people. But Joe Biden will have to do a diplomatic dance to get the help there without increasing tensions in the Middle East.
We will do what we need to do to protect our national security interests there in the region.
At the White House, Jonathan Kersley, 9 News.
1 foot in front of the other. Ultramarathon runner Pat. The conflict in Israel is more than 14,000 kilometres away. But tonight, the grief and horror is being felt right here in Sydney. The Rose Bay friends of a family slaughtered by Hamas have shared the final message they received.
You don't need a translator to see these 3 young children were full of life.
It's so hard to imagine that they're gone. I would tell them that I love them, and I really hope they were not scared.
6-year-old twins Shahar and Abel and their 4-year-old brother Omer inside their home on a 2,000-hectare kibbutz in Israel's south. Sheltering in a bunker with their elderly grandmother and parents, Johnny Simentov and his wife, community leader Tamar Kedem Simentov.
She was the first person to text, guys, there are missiles, we're hitting in the shelter and everything is okay with us. How are you guys doing?
Close friends Ishai and Morlaikov inside their Sydney home on Saturday.
And slowly we just noticed that she's not responding.
In the space of an hour, a group chat on messenger service WhatsApp growing worried before confirming the worst.
Were slaughtered while they were hiding.
Who do you protect first? Your own life, your babies? What do you do in that situation?
The family spent time in Sydney last year volunteering at a Bondi food bank. Tamar was Ishai's university mentor.
She was the most joyful person I ever met, the most caring person I ever met.
She really wanted to make a difference and to make this world better.
We will do everything we can to spread peace and love on the path of Tamar and Johnny.
Ruth Wynne-Williams, 9 News.
A police task force has been set up to identify pro-Palestinian protesters who burned an Israeli flag and lit up flares during a rally at the Opera House. The Prime Minister condemned the gathering after some chanted anti-Semitic slurs. And a warning, some viewers may find this story distressing.
An icon turned blue and white. Supporters of Israel watch on from a safe distance. But across the harbour, at ground level, another group, much bigger and louder. Blue and white also in their sights, an Israeli flag torched and trashed. And today, the condemnation began.
This was an appalling act of indiscriminate violence.
It was not just the actions of the mob, but their words. Before some in the crowd turned back the clock to the horrors of history.
To see that mob chanting, "Gas the Jews" and "F the Jews" should never have occurred.
To have the slogans that were chanted last night, that I won't even repeat the ones that I saw, is explicitly an anti-Semitic chant.
Asala Ciara was a protest organiser.
Free Palestine! Long live Palestine!
Today she conceded the slur was wrong.
As a Palestinian activist, I condemn and I am against Zionism. I am not against Judaism.
On Sunday night at another protest, an Islamic leader caused outrage over this speech.
I'm smiling and I'm happy. I'm elated.
The Sheikh has since posted on Facebook. He was misquoted, saying he was elated that Palestinians had broken a 16-year blockade of grave suffering.
I'd ask the House to stand as a mark of respect.
A minute's silence today in Parliament for lives lost in the conflict. It was broken with the admission yesterday's protest was unauthorised.
The police did not approve a march.
But they gave it the green light to ensure the streets remain safe.
It was considered the best option for police was to manage the movement of those people.
The protesters marched from Town Hall to the Opera House. There was only one arrest. Mark Spiro, carrying a rolled-up Israeli flag, was marched away by police.
What's he being arrested for?
Mark Leach, an Anglican minister, went unnoticed by police as he unfurled his Israeli flag.
I heard some of the men in the crowd start chanting, "Kill the Jews," at which point I thought, I have to do something. I can't let this pass.
But he was immediately spotted by some of the protesters and was forced to run. The organisers of yesterday's protest insist it was a legal demonstration and they intend to be back on the streets this Sunday. Leaders of Australia's Jewish community are also considering a mass public response. But ironically, for safety reasons, police may have the final say. Damien Ryan, 9 News.
In Australia, protesters have been condemned for burning the Israeli flag outside the Sydney Opera House. Police in Melbourne are now on high alert as a pro-Palestine rally gets underway in the CBD. More from Adam Hegarty.
At Melbourne's State Library, the flags and diaspora of Palestine.
I've taken up this issue because I think that Palestinians deserve to be free and that, they deserve to be able to resist their occupiers.
The battle is a long way away, but it's a divide on our doorstep. This evening's rally forming a night after and just suburbs over from a show of unity for Israel, a packed Caulfield synagogue.
We stand with you. We stand with Israel.
But it was at Sydney's Opera House where it didn't need to be a war zone to be shockingly confronting. Chants reminiscent of evil thought lost to history. And proof this conflict reaches well beyond the Middle East. Scenes that rocked many and leaders have been quick to condemn.
I think that they were abhorrent. I think that they're the opposite of what we want in our modern multicultural community.
Among them, though, genuine support for the plight of Palestinians.
The chants only occurred for a few seconds. As a Palestinian activist, I condemn and I am against Zionism. I am not against Judaism.
Hundreds marching from Sydney's Town Hall to the landmark lit up in the colours of Israel, lighting flares, torching an Israeli flag and guarded by a wall of police. A small Jewish contingent watching from a distance, but most urged to stay away in their own city.
It is un-Australian, let's call it what it is. There's anti-Semitism.
Now, concerns of a repeat here, after our own buildings were lit up in Israel's blue and white. At last night's Caulfield synagogue vigil, with flashing police cars outside, the Deputy Premier, the opposition leader, several politicians and Australia's Defence Minister united against the Hamas attack.
It is horribly unimaginable. And these were not combatants, they were innocents. And that makes this murder.
The pain and distress of the past 72 hours written on the faces in attendance. Yaakov's lost 3 friends already.
There's no words. Australians will never understand.
Adam's outside the State Library. Adam, what are the crowd numbers like there now?
Pete, they're definitely growing. You can no doubt make that out behind me now. Probably a few hundred here on the steps of the State Library. The chants have begun of Free Palestine. We've got the banner here, Free Palestine, Boycott Israel. And quite a young crowd, largely. If you look up here, a lot of those flags, Palestinian flags, being held up right now, clearly by school students, many of them in school uniform. It was a rather somewhat impromptu gathering here this evening, planning only from last night or so. The main rally planned here for pro-Palestinians was for Sunday at this same location, but with everything they've seen over the past couple of days, they decided to bring a second one forward tonight. There are police on patrol in this area, both on foot and in patrol around the State Library precinct, but Pete, clearly, and you can see that here now, for the most part so far, very, very peaceful.
Thank you, Adam Hegarty, reporting from the State Library.